Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Julie and Eric Morrow. Welcome to Take the Black Live, the one and only show on the internet where myself, Dan Selcke, the editor of winteriscoming.net, and over there, Daniel Roman, co-editor of winteriscoming.net, talk all things fantasy, sci-fi, movies, and TV. Daniel, how are you this fine Wednesday afternoon?
I'm doing all right. I was not here yesterday, so even though everyone keeps telling me it's Wednesday, my body thinks it's Monday. But generally good.
Oldest story
Ready
in the
to
world.
talk some. Yeah, right. That's I actually read that out of a scroll to prep for the show right before this. But no, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's just there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
This is the time that we kind of prophesied and feared and dreamed of when we have the new Game of Thrones show, House of the Dragon, running every Sunday, exploding all over the place. Did you see, by the way, that I wrote a whole article about how viewership dropped, but then there was an update. I was wrong.
Yeah,
like, it dropped
I did
linearly, but it went up HBO Max because everyone was too busy getting drunk at the barbecue on Sunday, Labor Day, and they all caught up with it the next day, I guess is the theory. So the show's a huge hit, and at the same time, we're watching this Lord of the Rings show, The Rings of Power, over on Amazon, and my head is full of hobbits and dragons and, dwarves and elves and incestuous white blonde-haired people who just can't keep their hands off each other. And it's just such an interesting time. We're not going to be more busy at any point in the year.
Yes, that's what I keep telling myself. This is our busy time. It's hard to imagine things being more busy than having the opening seasons of House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power on at the same time. If you are into fantasy television, it is mayhem right now in the best of ways. I like it though. It's fun, both of these shows are doing pretty well in their own rights. They both have had some interesting conversations. I say interesting. We can also say infuriating, depending on where you're sitting surrounding them. But if you're just a fan of this stuff, now it's like, now are the shows that were promised. Forget the prince that was promised. We now have the shows that were promised. So it's pretty exciting.
Work. And thanks, Julie, for that article. Thank you, Julie. And hello to Nicole. Hello, Christian. Hello, Martha. Hello, Terry. Hello, Edith. Hello, everybody who joined us on this journey. And today, I thought that we thought that nice. We would kind of have a I do have the what remains of the gavel. We thought we'd kind of have a talk about the way these shows are interacting with each other, kind of, because look, before they came on and today, the question was always, there's these two giant fantasy titans, Lord of the Rings in the one corner, House of Dragon in the other. Is one better than the other? Is one worse? Is one going to win? Does one have to win? Is one going to lose? And also, what is with the disparate levels of backlash they're getting? Because I can't be the only one who's noticed that a lot more people seem to have a problem with the Rings of Power than have with House of the Dragon. Like, House of the Dragon is pretty well liked across critics and fans, whereas the Rings of Power, we have a good old-fashioned ratio thing happening, where we got a lot of critics who are saying it's great, and then we have all the a very low fan vote around hers anyway. There's a lot more criticism. So I want to get into some of that. And Daniel, I'll just ask, and I'll ask all of you out there this question right up front. Which one wins? Which one's winning? Huh? Which one wins? Which one beats the other to a pulp? Which one wins the battle of the death? Right now.
I think right now, I think House of the Dragon is winning the grudge match, but it's hard because it has one episode ahead and 2 weeks ahead, because Amazon released 2 for Rings of Power at once. So that's 1 week in. House of the Dragon is 3 weeks in. But I think those viewership numbers kind of are speaking for themselves in terms of how big of a hit this thing is, because I don't think even HBO would have expected that House of the Dragon would take this well. That basically it went up after the first episode, which is like borderline unheard of. Like, that's really uncommon.
Pretty damn rare. Yeah.
And then this third episode, when you wrote your article this morning about how it went down, I was kind of like, it happened. It happens to every show. After a premiere, it goes down. like you said in the article, I think it just took 2 weeks for House of the Dragon instead of 1. But then we got the streaming numbers, and it's basically a wash. Like, it didn't really go down at all, or not noticeably enough that I think anyone is sweating over it. So, yeah, it's tough because House of the Dragon just has more data and more. We've been able to see the impact a little more. Whereas Rings of Power, everyone's still kind of getting a feel for it, what it'll be like. Personally, I'm a little more into House of the Dragon, but again, we need to see more of the Rings of Power. What do you think? Who's winning? Out there too. Who do you think is winning?
House of the Dragon for me so far. It's because I mean, big shocker, right? Like, this is a Game of Thrones fan site. Obviously, I'm just primed for this kind of story. I will say I've been enjoying them both, and they are both hits. Some great comments, by the way. I'm gonna get to them in a second. Like, they are both hits. Like, I think the premiere House of the Dragon had like 25 million people. The premiere Lord of the Rings had 25 million people. Like, these are big numbers for both. And I honestly do think, after watching them both, even though I prefer House of the Dragon's kind of more grounded, gritty sort of texture, they're different enough that they can definitely both coexist. Before I go on, let's switch some with some great comments. Jason makes some excellent comments over on YouTube about the reason why there's less backlash to House of the Dragon than Rings of Power. We're going to talk about a little later, although I'll read them now because they're just really good. Jason says, and I agree with this completely, in terms of why the Lord of the Rings has more backlash to House of the Dragon, that George R. R. Martin is alive and he endorses House of the Dragon. Whereas Tolkien is dead some decades now, and everyone wants to speak for him. George R. Martin is involved with House of the Dragon, and if this stuff about, like, you can't have a black person riding a dragon reached him, he would say, like, that's stupid. Whereas Tolkien cannot do it. Didn't Christopher Tolkien even die?
Christopher Tolkien's dead too. I mean, this thing, it does have the blessing of the Tolkien estate, but Christopher Tolkien's gone, J.R.R. Tolkien's gone.
There's just more degrees removed. I mean, it has less than the Tolkien estate, and the Tolkien estate also has like $1 billion from Amazon, so it seems less pure.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that for sure. Nicole says the shows are very different. House of the Dragon is winning in terms of political drama, but Lord of the Rings is winning in terms of scenery and fun. And I think I agree with that. I kind of agree, yeah. I think I definitely found myself gasping at the scenery way more in Rings of Power from what we've seen. And it is. They're more fun. They're comedic characters. We don't really have that in House of the Dragon yet, aside from those Lannisters.
Really fast, I want to say that, Claudia, I do remember 2017 Natural Kind of Thrones. That was a good time. But yeah, I agree with you that if it was like, I liked both, and there was definitely a zippy, fun element of the Rings of Power that just obviously doesn't really. It's not. You're not going to have it in House of the Dragon, where the whole thing is. Who is going to succeed the throne? The brother who cuts people in half at the waist and then drags their bodies to the surf, or the daughter who's going to get up to all kinds of, I won't spoil it, but some stuff. And just it's a lot lighter in the Rings of Power. You have those adorable Harfoot characters who are kind of, name things like Twiggly Brandyfoot and Mirabelle Gigglewine, who are able to just bring some levity and be so innocent. No one in House of the Dragon is innocent, and I do like that. And the scenery, good Lord. I mean, if there's one strength that show has, oh my God, Daniel. I mean, I've seen some folks saying, like, hey, what do they spend the money on? What are you talking about?
It's baffling.
Everywhere. Yeah. Just totally. The most impressive for me was probably Khazad-dûm, the dwarves place. Yeah. It looked remarkable. Just all the details. And and even if it did look like a little fake, it was like that fantastical otherworldly fake that almost fits a ridiculous impossible society. They had trees down there. It just looks so good. I have like some issues with it, but more or less, it's good and it is different. I don't really see them
Yes.
needing to beat one or the other. Although Sword of the Morning has a strong opinion. House of the Dragon clearly winning, not too surprising. House of the Dragon respects the lore and source material. Ooh, here we go. Where Rings of Power takes many liberties of Tolkien's lore. That's where that's coming from, which I agree to a point.
Let's
although
talk
I think
about
there's some
that.
wrinkles there.
Do you think it is taking many liberties? Because you're more familiar with the Tolkien lore, but even I, who is less familiar, knows that the Second Age is like the least documented part of Tolkien's lore. Like, First Age is most of the Silmarillion. Third Age is the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. The Second Age really just gets a couple chapters, and they mostly deal with Numenor. So what do you think? Is it taking more liberties aside from Meteor Guy, which that's just a huge question mark that could be a gigantic liberty? Do you think it's taking lots of liberties? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fair one.
I mean, all the Rings of Power is liberties. Like, yeah, our commentators are right that it is absolutely far off the beaten path. I mean, those first 2 episodes, I don't think there's a thing in there that Tolkien wrote. Not really. I mean, it's not contradicting things technically yet. Although I do have my fears about that. Like, so, by the way, I'll just say this. That Meteor Guy, if that's Gandalf, that is a contradiction, probably. Because even in that, because Tolkien was sort of clear that Gandalf and the wizards came during the Third Age, 1,000 years in. Gandalf got off at the docks and he met the elf Círdan, and Círdan's like, here's a ring. He did not fall from a meteor in the Second Age. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Although even there, like, Tolkien was the kind of guy who like had a billion drafts, and apparently there is one note where he considered introducing the wizards in the Second Age. So I guess you could hide in that, you coward. But the version most people know is they're in the Third Age. I'm just saying that. But anyway, yes. Yeah. The show is all liberties, and I've read the Silmarillion twice because I hate myself. I'm pretty big into Tolkien lore. I know it fairly well. Nothing in there is in there. Like, Galadriel is a character that Tolkien wrote, sure, but she never did any of this. I mean, I guess that they did make friends with the dwarves in Khazad-dûm, so he didn't write like, and then Elrond talked to Durin and they made an alliance, and then they went back to Celebrimbor and they're like, here's your forge. He just wrote like, they had great friendship back then. So we're seeing the details filled out, which to me is fine. I mean, like, that's not offending me.
Yeah, that's kind of the nature of the way he wrote the Second Age, because it's glossing over like thousands of years. And again, it really is only like a handful of chapters. I don't have the Silmarillion next to me, but it's not a lot of chapters.
No, it's pretty short.
Because it's too many bookshelves in one place. But I think that it's interesting because there is less source material for the Second Age. So yes, it is all it's like it's all liberties and none of it's liberties, if that makes sense, because there's less like blow by blow descriptions. Like you said, the dwarves and elves had great friendships, but like if you put that in a show and you flesh it, you can't just say that one line and then it's like, well, now we know they had great friendships. How do you show that? And no matter how they showed that, it was going to technically be a liberty, even though it's not, if it's still showing the same. Does that make sense?
It does. And that's why I'm concerned about being banned Gandalf. By the way, Sword of the Morning, who do you think that Meteor Guy is? I'm curious, because I think we all have our theories at this point. Yeah. Here's the key thing, though. Just because it's taking liberties doesn't mean I'm not enjoying it. I mean,
totally.
I did. Like, I watched it. I've read Tolkien since a young age. I've read the Silmarillion twice, and keep saying that. Just make sure you know I'm bona fide. And I mean, like, this is fun. Like, I'm having fun with this. I liked, again, my favorite bit was probably the Khazad-dûm stuff with Elrond and Durin and the rock picking contest. And then his wife was really fun, and just the family running around. They had some good energy, and the Harfoots are fun. I don't really like the, at least I'm kind of bored by the one elf and then the human lady who apparently are in a romance. And I'm like, I'm just not feeling much chemistry here. But again,
Yeah.
that's because the show it's not doing a good job of doing it. It's not because Tolkien didn't write this. It's because I don't think the show is really selling those two.
Agree.
We have so many good comments here. Okay, my first guess for the morning says was a blue wizard,
Field some.
which again would be a contradiction because all damn wizards, the gray, the white, the brown, Radagast, and the two blue ones who may or may not have names, they all came in the Third Age, according to at least the text we got, even though apparently there's a note that Tolkien was like, maybe they were in the second, whatever. I don't think that's even published. But just, you can hide in anything. Okay, so I'm going to read a comment from, we're getting some, should we go with
we going to get salty?
Backlash to the Rings of Power, or read Julie's comments about the battle in Second of His Name? There are so many choices here.
I think, we're going to talk about the Backlash more. I have a succinct answer for Julie. So let's touch on that one first.
Okay, that's a safer one anyway. So Julie's saying that I find it amusing that people all over the place are comparing Daemon to Jon Snow in Battle of the Bastards. At least Jon was a likable character. Daemon is nuts. Just ask the poor dude who had to hand the message to him from Viserys. Oh, that was so funny. He beat the creep crab guy, which still doesn't have the principles by Jon Snow. And yeah, Julie, I agree. Daemon is not Jon Snow. Daemon is far more of a loose cannon. Daemon is way more flexible with the morals. I don't think he's like Jon Snow at all. I am really entertained by him, though. And again, I said this before, I didn't think I would be. Like, there was like a connection. There was like some folks who were saying Matt Smith shouldn't be in this, he doesn't fit. I didn't care. Like, I know Matt Smith is a good actor. I wasn't worried about that. I was worried about like Daemon in the book is a complete jerk in Fire and Blood. I'm not sure how they're gonna make him likable, but here he is. And even though I don't endorse the choices of Daemon Targaryen, I sure do want to see what he does next.
Yeah, I think the showrunners have praised Matt Smith for bringing a lot more three-dimensional development to Daemon and his performance. But I think the reason he's getting compared to Jon Snow, so just to be clear, he is not virtuous like Jon in the slightest. In that respect, the comparison is not warranted. I think this battle in particular has some similarities to the Battle of the Bastards that I touched on this during our after show, which is that it really is about Daemon kind of losing it emotionally and going off into the battle in a ridiculously unwise way, which is exactly how Battle of the Bastards starts. Jon rushes the front lines because Rickon dies. I saw one meme that was pretty funny, that Daemon can zigzag. Rickon could not zigzag.
Oh, yeah, that was good stuff.
But there are also some shots that kind of call Jon to mind. There's one shot where Jon is watching Ramsay flee into Winterfell. He's covered in grime. He has like this almost animalistic look on his face.
Sure.
And I think the shot of Daemon coming out with the crab feeder's body is one of the closest things we've had to that shot of Jon since Battle of the Bastards. So I feel like there are filmmaking reasons why I can see the comparison, but as characters, no way. No comparison.
Yeah, not even close. And that's fine. There's really no one like Jon on the show, which again, I'm rereading Fire and Blood right now just because the show's on and I'm curious. And I think I mentioned this. Like I'm reading it, and now I'm picturing like the actors in it because now I've seen it. And I forgot how crazy bleak and brutal this story gets.
It's bad.
Reading it gives me like a whole new. This is gonna be ridiculous. I don't know how fuck are gonna feel when they get some of these plot twists. Like, God, because like I knew it was coming, but before I actually watched the show, I guess I could just kind of like put it over here in my head, but not think about it. Now that the actors are here, I'm rereading it. Like, we have to see the actors do this and say these things and commit these acts. It's gonna this show keeps getting popular. The discourse is gonna be very, very interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts on House of the Dragon before we pivot back?
Nope. Let's pivot.
Okay. Damon Targ says Rings of Power is boring, simple reasoning. I do agree, Damon, that I did kind of snooze a bit in the first episode, but then I kind of got around it for the second one. I'm not sure what changed, but I'm liking it. I'm looking forward to more. So folk were talking about the backlash people have had, and let's just the facts first are that Rings of Power definitely has a bigger backlash than House of the Dragon. Just like I said before, like Rings of Power has a good old fashioned ratio thing where the critics scores like here and the fan scores like way down here, whereas House of the Dragon is more equal. We got grifters like Elon Musk who are dragging it on Twitter, saying that
ridiculous.
He said like Tolkien's rolling over in his grave. He actually did like the feminist argument of like all the female characters are great and the male characters aren't, which is like right off like a 13-year-old's first Reddit post. Like
it was even more it was even more of a garbage argument than that, because it was like Galadriel is the only virtuous noble character and all the men characters are weak and bad, basically, which is like, watch the show, Galadriel's gray right out of the gate. Meanwhile, Elrond and Durin are definitely. So that felt like a bad faith. Let me get some
bad faith.
Stir the
Elon
pot.
Musk making bad faith arguments just for attention.
I know, right?
Whatever Elon Musk's kind of opines, the opposite is probably the thing you should endorse. Is basically the thing there. But I mean, the fact that a bad faith grifter like him is cottoning on means that there is energy, because he only says that kind of thing if he thinks it can stir people to be excited, preferably in an angry way, because then that gets him attention, and then he can, I don't know, make the price of flip coin do something. There's been a lot of backlash, and a lot of it is that identity stuff. A lot of people have been saying, and I know that some commenters up there, and I'm sorry you went up the comment wall and I've lost you, but we're talking about it is true that there are Tolkien not purists, but just like big Tolkien fans who are upset at all the changes. Like, speaking again, I'm a big Tolkien fan. I've read, I'm saying it for a third time, I've read Silmarillion multiple times.
Say it again.
That's enough. And a lot's been changed, or a lot's been rather added. It isn't upsetting me because the show is good. The show's good. The show's good. And I would understand if some people who are very attached to the lore are angered by so much being added. My problem is that I feel like that is being used as a Trojan horse a lot for other folk to smuggle in much less respectable arguments. Because someone up there said, I forget who it was, and I'm sorry, that let's be real, a large part of the backlash is kind of this gross underbelly of the fandom who are, I mean, let's be honest, they don't, a lot of the criticism has been that there's a black dwarf. A lot of the criticism has been that there's a black hobbit.
Yeah.
And a black elf. Yes, they're black all around. That there are brown people in the show, people don't like it. And
exactly,
it can be hard. Like, someone like Elon Musk plays in the ambiguity of, I'm not gonna come right out and say the racist bit, but I know the racist energy is there, and so I'm just gonna poke the beehive and know that it will help me. There is a lot of racist backlash, sexist backlash, and it kind of gets intermingled with like people who actually don't like the show or are mad that the lore has been changed, which it reminds me of Gamergate in a way. Remember that when there was like this thing where some people, where there were a lot of folk who were like, the standards in video game ethics are dropping, and I'm mad about it. But like the bottom of the base was just full on attacking female game developers. But then it tricked some like kind of middling people into thinking it's about game journalism ethics. I'm getting a lot of that here. Where
the rabbit puppies
so
thing.
Much. Oh yeah.
Like that kind of energy for sure.
Yeah. It's this whole like Trojan horse kind of ethos. Sorry, you were gonna say something. Go ahead.
No, I totally agree. I think are there valid criticisms to be made? Of course there are. I think there are with both House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, with the caveat that it's early days for both of these shows. So it's hard to judge a show on changes or things like that until you can see more of it and see kind of why these changes are made. Now, complaining about things like casting,
Good times.
that just, yeah, that it does strike me as bad faith arguments as ways to sneak in basically racist comments, which like, don't take it from me, the actors playing these parts have been have talked about this, the vitriol that they have gotten for months and months and months, years in the case of Ismael Cruz Cordova, plays Arondir, the black elf that we see in the first episode.
Who is
of the
boring.
Rings of Power.
I just want to make that clear. I think it's kind of boring, but not bad.
It is my least favorite plot line, not because of his performance, though. I think he's actually doing great. I just think it's less compellingly written than the other plot lines.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I do think it definitely feels like that dark underbelly, because at a certain point, what is the Lord of the Rings about? It's about all these races coming together to fight the forces of evil. So if you are going to have a sticking point of that over excluding different peoples based on what lore that was not explicitly stated in the Second Age, because Tolkien didn't write all that much about it, that smacks to me of basically trying to have a kind of racial purity for the sake of your escapist fantasy doesn't include those kinds of people, which is not really cool. So yeah, it's a messy, disgusting topic to even have to talk about, but it's getting talked about so much that I've seen channels that normally are very straightforward talking about these things kind of being like, we don't want to discuss this.
So when one of these kind of internet backlash hate mob things happen, they have a history of turning their ire on, I don't know, someone they decide represents the things they don't like and just blast them. So I guess I get why some people are hesitant to talk about it, but I mean, it's also very obvious. Like, again, like the actor, like you said, the actor who plays the elf in The Rings of Power, the actor who plays Corvus Valerian, House of the Dragon, they both said, oh yeah, we've been flooded with like hateful, vicious racial messages for a while now. Like, and then there's like the more respectable face of it that you get on Twitter and around Tomatoes. People are like using a little bit less coded language, but it's still pretty obvious to see if you just, read it for more than half a second. My hope, I guess, is that the show goes on, because again, the show's a hit, that both shows continue, and that, people see that the show is decent and the world hasn't imploded, even though there are some black hobbits, and we just kind of leave it at that. Usually, a rolling ball of hate tends to lose energy afterward, because you can't really sustain that level of passion for very long, ideally. We can go into other things. We can go into conservative politics. It's complicated, but that's my hope. The people will kind of drop it eventually, and we can just enjoy the two shows. I think we have some good comments.
Yeah, same. And I think, if they stick around long enough. So Amazon, I'm curious what your opinion on this is. Amazon is doing this new thing that they say is not because of the Rings of Power. They implemented it over the summer, but it's getting press because of the Rings of Power, which is that they are suspending reviews on it for the first like 72 hours, I think, because it's getting review bombed. And review bombed in this case is specifically referring to bad faith actors going on and one-starring it basically for the reasons that we're saying here, which we've seen happen with other shows. Like, I think it happened with Miss Marvel.
Interesting. Another show that has a lead of color. I wonder if there's a coincidence, a commonality here. I did hear about that. The issue, I mean, on the one hand, of course, it makes sense, because look, a review bomb crush like this, whether it's Ms. Marvel, Rings of Power, Captain Marvel back in the day got this.
Yes.
A lot of things where folks are just kind of like, before it's even out, they're just absolutely spitting all over it. I mean, they aren't helpful, useful reviews, because they're not born of I watched it, I didn't like it, I'm going to write a review about it. They're born of, I decided I hate it because of XYZ, usually as a woman or a person of color in it. And I'm just going to, crap all over it for, I don't know, your own personal satisfaction or something, because that's the momentum you have when you're part of this mob. So I get why they would want to stop, because, and if someone says like, well, you can't, people can say what they want to say. Like, yes, they can, but the point of a review, if the point of a review is to give your opinion on something that you actually saw, there's no, that's not what's happening there. I can also see Amazon, of course, doing that, and then also pruning the reviews that just genuinely didn't like it, because Amazon has an interest in wanting to make it, that show that it spent all this money on, look like it's beloved and favorable. I didn't know they owned IMDb, by the way. I didn't realize that.
Same. I didn't until that story broke.
Which, I mean, like, not shocked, but
yeah, not shocked, a little like, okay. There's kind of this gray area where it's like, I totally don't support the idea of review bombing. I very much agree with you that like, that's just not helpful. That's not the purpose of a review. If you're going to write about a thing you haven't watched, you're not talking about in a measured way that is meant to help people be more informed about the thing. So I can understand that take on it. On the flip side, it's always just a little uncomfortable how much Amazon owns, and being able to do things like you said, like control, like, yes, finding ways to stop review bombing is important. I also don't necessarily trust Amazon to not just use that argument to make themselves look better, because I feel like we've kind of seen, maybe not specific instances of that, but enough instances of their business practices being a little shady in terms of things like reviews. Like in the book industry, they also own Goodreads, and there are all sorts of issues like that. That it's hard to trust. It's kind of this interesting thing where it's like, they're not in the wrong here, but because of their past practices, it's just hard to trust them.
Yes, a mob of racist hate mongers versus Jeff Bezos. I mean, neither party is rosy here. I mean, and then what gets caught and forgotten in the middle is the show itself, which is not bad.
Yes.
So
no,
that's
what
what I'm to focus on, and that's what I'm going to focus on going forward. By the way, good comment from Jason on YouTube. It says the Rings of Power cast has also been more vocal about how important representation means to them, which triggers the kind of awful folks. Which, yeah, whenever you have I forgot my train of thought. Triggering's funny because triggering like began as like kind of a more progressive idea of, you're going to read this article that contains the description of some kind of possibly triggering event. And then it got taken up by the reactionary right time people as, oh, libs are triggered. Yeah. And now it's kind of coming back around to describe people who are triggered at the barest mention of maybe it's okay to have a black person as an elf.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, just get rid of the word. I hate it. The word woke too.
Yeah.
And Julie, thank you.
Yes,
just sensible. It's great. We are so
Julie.
sensible and smart and excellent.
We try.
Okay, so I'll go to my original question now. So Rings of Power and House of the Dragon walk into a cage match and they fight each other. Which one do you bet your last $100 on, you horrible gambling addict?
I mean, it's got to be House of the Dragon. I think the thing for me with House of the Dragon that is selling it more, aside from the fact that it's a more adult show, so like by its very nature, the situations are going to be way more complex than Rings of Power, because someone a while back, I missed who it was, and I'm sorry, but someone a while back in the comments said that the Rings of Power is more of a family show. And obviously that's true. You can totally watch Rings of the Power, the Rings of some power, with your children, provided they're, old enough to watch slightly scary things. House of the Dragon is y'all better be adults, basically. but I think the writing on House of the Dragon is way sharper than the Rings of Power at this point. And even though the visuals I think are a bit better on Rings of Power, to be honest, I think House of the Dragon as a whole, the package is selling itself better in my opinion, because it's just a more compelling story.
Yeah.
It is tighter, but that's the nature of it.
Yeah.
You said a while back, Rings of Power is almost more like Game of Thrones than House of the Dragon is, because it has all these disparate stories around the map, and we're wondering when they're going to cross again. Meanwhile, House of the Dragon, one of the things that originally stood out to me a lot about it is that it is so focused compared to Game of Thrones. Like, we're talking like one really strong through line story, and then it branches to occasionally follow a different family member like Daemon, who's off doing his thing. So that's where my money goes. How about yours?
I call the police because the fight was illegal. I don't know why you just did this. You shouldn't have done that in the first place. And they break it up. And then both people I have back to my house and I have them for dinner and I make them a nice pot roast. So that's what I do. You chose conflict. You chose violence. I chose everybody.
That sounds right.
And I can love them both. It does.
You're pushing the Harfoot point of view here. Everyone can get along and have fun. There are enough blackberries for all of us. Blackberries being fantasy shows.
Exactly. Blackberries. Is that most folk are okay. There we go. Philip is all on the rings of the power. I do not. I could try and make a pot roast, Christian. I could probably do it. How hard could it be? I cook a little. I'm not great at it, but I can do it. So okay,
pot roast,
lots of good discussion
in the pot,
here.
It roasts.
That's probably true. It won't be good. I'll burn it too black. Let's see. And Jason wants Galadriel's actress. I believe his name is Morford Clark. She's Welsh. I can't pronounce her name. On House of the Dragons Targaryen. Ooh, that's not a
she'd be great.
Idea. Yeah, she would.
Yeah, totally.
They're both good. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying both. I'm not gonna say that name. M. Paul Fidel 2008 watches Rings of Power with his kids, House of Dragon with his wife. And tells his 13-year-old he's got 5 more years so he can watch Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
And I am glad they're both funny audiences, and I wish the best to both of them. And I think the whole clash over the kind of the mob, whether it be bad faith, good faith, I think someone up there, again, which was a smart comment, who said that it can be hard to tell whether like a review bomb mob is genuinely not liking something or just enervated by a ball of hate.
Yes.
Which, I don't know. I think usually it's not that hard to tell when it's on this scale, but I take your point.
I agree.
It's always a mix. And that's
totally.
And that's how the bigots need it to be. Because if it's just a pack of bigots and no one in there is making good arguments, it's so obvious they're people we don't want around. So it's almost like, again, like Gamergate, like somebody's, they need cover to do what they do. Like, that's a required part for them. And it almost lessens something.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's a slippery slope, but the thing is, with those sorts of review bombs, which I agree, I think it's a slippery slope, but you can usually kind of tell when one's happening if you actually scroll through them a little bit.
It's happened enough now that we know the signs.
Yeah, and it doesn't just lessen, the overall score of a show. It actually makes it harder to, if you don't like something, to get the negative reviews. It kind of covers those up so that it's harder to differentiate the good faith ones that are giving you legitimate criticisms, which are there to be made. They get almost drowned out by review bombing. So it's not good for people who love the show or people who dislike it for very legitimate reasons.
True.
So
at the same time, Amazon can suck eggs. Like, I'm not saying they're great either. So it's at minimum complicated. Okay, I think we'll end this with Jason's comment before I just get so heated my hair boils off my head. Jason says from YouTube, I do think folks need to sit back and enjoy the richness fantasy fans can really just revel in, as opposed to in there and trying to compete. probably for the best, because at the end of the day, we got two
Yeah.
great shows on. The Sandman just wrapped up. I loved that as well. There's on the way. There's just a lot of good stuff right now. And hopefully we can find a way to all enjoy it without getting caught up in nonsense culture war stuff. But, we'll check back next week and see how that's going. Okay, Daniel, and everyone out there, are you watching anything besides the Rings of Power and House of the Dragon right now? And if so, what and why and who?
Oh man, there are other shows aside from House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Well, I guess She-Hulk.
Yeah,
Marvel's
like
got a thing
30,000.
that's kind of going on right now. I'm enjoying She-Hulk. I think it's a lot of fun. Wait, you've been watching that too,
I
right?
have. I don't like it. I'm sorry, but okay, so it's a sitcom that I've not laughed at. That's kind of the bottom line for this.
How have you not? Which is fair because that's sitcoms, right? It's kind of like you either they click with you or they don't.
Days of Our Lives. That's basically it. Like that last episode, I did watch it, and the bit where like Megan the Stallion and She-Hulk are twerking together, and I'm like, is the joke that Megan the Stallion is a celebrity and she's here? Like, what's the punchline?
Yes.
Like, what
that
is
was the punchline,
the
Dan.
twist? What's the gag? Is it just that, oh, I know her, she's twerking? And I don't want to like badmouth it too bad, because if you like it, you like it, and that's great, and I'm happy for you. I don't think I've laughed once. Just nothing has struck me as original or interesting enough. Nothing's like surprised me or like gotten me on a hook. Like the fact that Megan Thee Stallion is there is not a joke. Like it's a cameo. Like you have to write a joke. You have to write a punchline and a surprise in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the joke was that it wasn't her. They didn't think she was there. It was this elf impersonating her, and then she is there in the courtroom.
She says, only one Megan.
Isn't that funny?
No, it's a reference. A reference isn't a joke. Just okay.
Yeah.
But that's me. And if you're enjoying it, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I hope you have a bang up time with it. We also got comedy is subjective, and Richard subjectively thinks Selcke is wrong. Fair enough. But Natalie's with me.
I mean,
pay me to watch it. It's fine. It's just it's not for me.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think this is, it's a fluffier Marvel show. I'm enjoying it. I'm laughing at it quite a bit. I can totally understand if it's not your bag though. And I will say, so one thing I have been watching that I did not expect to watch, I've been watching Agent Carter, which came out a few years back. It's on Disney Plus now. And Agent Carter's really underrated. And it's kind of interesting to watch that and She-Hulk, because both of them kind of have these feminist ideas of like Agent Carter. The whole show is about, it's a period piece, and she's in this office that are all men, and they totally overlook her. And that allows her to basically do her own investigation right under their noses. And that show, the writing is really sharp and better than most of the MCU shows that we've gotten. Like that's technically part of the MCU, but it was on ABC. It wasn't done by Marvel Studios the same way. The Marvel MCU shows, they've definitely worn on me a bit, even though I am enjoying She-Hulk.
She-Hulk.
And yeah, Richard, the ABC Marvel shows are underrated. I was surprised when I watched Agent Carter at how good it was. She had some mic drop lines. I teared up a little bit in one episode.
Cool. Some folk said they're watching Primal up there, which I never saw, but I do like that guy's like Samurai Jackson, Dexter's Laboratory are always fun.
I've heard it's great.
Yeah, me too. I should check it out. Philip is watching What We Do in the Shadows, which is also being very good. I'm liking that one a lot this year. That one I do laugh at that one, but we all laugh at different things. So
yeah. Did you hey, I know this is very important. You need to know this. I think it was Sword of the Morning who said they're watching C and that it's really good. So now at least one other person that's watching that show.
We're gonna cover it. I swear to God, we have some writing reviews. Just they're on their way. I'm also watching The Rehearsal, which is just screwing with my head. that show is where reality and madness meet. And I don't know what to make of it. I'm transfixed and fascinated. That show is really interesting. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad.
Yeah.
I just know if it's bizarre. Have you heard of it? It's like
Vaguely.
kind of a reality show, but
What are they rehearsing for?
life. The guy, Nathan Fielder, just like the first episode is he's trying to help this trivia, like bar trivia maven, who has like a circle of friends, and he wants to admit to them that he's been lying about his advanced degree because they all have advanced degrees and he didn't because he felt bad. But it's gone on for like years now, and he feels awkward about saying it. So he concocts this whole thing where like, okay, we're gonna hire actors to play like the friend you need to come out to about this. We're gonna recreate the bar in every detail, and we're gonna like run through all these scenarios to see like what was the best way to break this to her. And they run it like thousands of times. They hire actors in there, they recreate everything. Like, should you do it before or after you get the chicken wing? Should you do it? And it gets really weird when it comes. And apparently it's all real, which is just mind blowing. And the second one gets even weirder.
Okay.
The second one involves children and like trying to rehearse for parenthood and hiring like 33 different child actors to like cycle in and pretend to be your kid for a while. And it's real. The person who's there real, like you're really doing it. It's a trip. And it's breaking my brain.
That sounds crazy.
But I'm interested.
That sounds nuts.
Fun fact. Oh, cool. Apparently Natalie lives near the bar. It's wild. Okay. Okay. Any other things?
That sounds wild.
It is. As Julie says, Jason Morgan's haircut. That's what I want to get off. Yeah, that is too bad. It's for pollution, Julie.
Yeah.
Or something.
For a good
Any
cause.
other thing you want to talk about before we go into our final section of the show, Daniel? And anybody else out there? Anything else you're watching you want to sign off about?
I guess I'll touch on this briefly because I don't know if anyone cares about this but me. The only other thing I watched recently, I watched Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. I've been on a huge Resident Evil kick, and It's been fascinating to me that movie came out in November, and that was the faithful adaptation of Resident Evil that actually used characters from the games, and it is I don't want to say it is faithful, but you can tell it tried really, really hard to be. They mashed two games together. They use all the characters from the games. It's fascinating to look at that and look at the Netflix show that just came out, which basically was like, we're just going to do our own thing and use the games as a backdrop a little bit, maybe if you squint right. It feels like both of them got some things
title
right.
And that's enough, right?
Yeah, it feels like both of them got some things and missed others. But Welcome to Raccoon City, I was pleasantly surprised. It's an actual horror movie, and it's not. I would never claim it's a great movie. Don't go into it expecting it to be really good. But if you expect it to be bad, you'll probably enjoy it.
Which is a skill that some folk have and some folk don't. I enjoy a bad thing myself every once in a while, so perhaps I'm not gonna watch it. But if I do, I'll know how.
That's fair. Yeah, I would say it's the closest thing to an actual adaptation of Resident Evil. Like when I say adaptation, I mean taking what is there and putting it on screen instead of we're gonna take the lore and just make up something. It's the closest thing to actually, which is, it's such a weird choice to be like, here's this beloved thing that is one of the best-selling things in its medium of all time. Let's take it and totally ignore everything in it and just make a zombie thing. So Welcome to Raccoon City, if you are remotely a fan of the games, is worth the watch, even just for the Easter eggs, because there are a lot. Like they even use the little keys from the second game. They're like, they're like the clover shaped key and the heart key.
The crest of the statue that opens the passage that is in every police station in America. Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be an art museum, man. It's refurbished, but that statue's there. So there are lots of little things like that where it's very obvious they tried hard, but the characters are a little weird. They're not quite on point, but overall, not bad. Could be
As
worse.
Julie asks, when is The Witcher third season coming out? No word on that,
Never.
Julie. Probably 2023. Whoa. Probably 2023. Someone else mentioned The Wheel of Time back up there, which is another good fantasy show it's on right now. And I forgot about that one. Probably that one's gonna be 2023 too. But we watch and wait.
I imagine that's the fantasy rumble we'll be talking about next year, is The Witcher and Wheel of Time. But both of them,
the second stringer fantasy shows fighting off against each other after these two prize fighters exit.
I want to know when we're going to get Blood Origin, because Netflix has been so suspiciously quiet, and they trimmed it down from 6 episodes to 4. So that Witcher prequel, we're supposed to get it in the next 3 months at some point.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway, maybe we'll come across some of these bits in our lightning round segment, where we go through several stories we didn't have the time to get to in the main body of the show and give our 20-second takes. As is becoming tradition, I really haven't organized these at all. So I'm just going to ask you and see what happens. No.
Hey, can we?
Yes.
Can we shout someone out first?
Of course we can.
Can we shout out JDE Palm 13, who said, "Glad to finally catch you guys live. Love the podcast and usually listen while I walk the dog. Thanks for hanging out and listening. Glad you caught us live and got to join in today."
Thanks, JDE. Cool. We are available in podcast form, by the way. Everybody doesn't know that, but he probably do. All right, shall we?
Let us lightning.
Okay.
Yes.
Daniel, press on the clock. Ryan Johnson is even more proud of The Last Jedi movie 5 years on. He still wants to make his own trilogy of Star Wars films.
I think that's cool. I can understand why he's more proud of it 5 years on. I think The Last Jedi is probably holding up better than you would have expected. So I can totally get behind that. And I'm glad that he doesn't feel remorse for it. Like, he thematically, he knew what he was doing. He stuck to his guns. And it's nice that he's proud.
Cool.
All right, Dan. The Batgirl movie, which was canceled by Warner, it was reportedly like a very expensive CW pilot. Selcke?
Yeah. So that means different things to different people. There are folk out there who would love an expensive CW pilot for a movie. I probably wouldn't, but more power to them. I have this secret thought that I don't know if it's accurate. It's a secret thought that maybe some of the things that are happening at Warner Brothers canceling these projects is for the best, but we'll have to figure that out later.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, we may never know.
Well, hopefully we will. Okay. Here's a pretty big one. So Legendary, the studio that makes Dune and some other things, is leaving Warner Brothers Discovery, which also canceled Batgirl, and is shopping itself around to Sony and other places.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about this. I don't know exactly what it's going to mean for Dune Part 2. I mean, Dune Part 2 is happening. It's going to come out no matter what, really.
Right.
I'm just curious how it's going to be distributed. And this isn't the first time Legendary has left Warner and shopped itself around. So this is interesting news, but not really alarming news.
Yeah. Warner Brothers.
All right. Ooh, I think this one's real cool. So we got to see our first image of Jamie Clayton as Pinhead in Hulu's new Hellraiser movie.
Explorers to some, explorers the further realms of human experience. Demons to some, angels to others. I like Hellraiser. And she looks pretty cool. It's Jamie Clayton, who I remember from Sense8 on Netflix, who was good in that. New Hellraiser. Cool. I like Hellraiser. You solve a little Rubik's Cube and then demons come and do horrible things to body horror.
I need to watch those. That sounds fun.
The first one's fun. Okay. This one was cool. Daniel, HBO, perhaps to compete with the Rings of Power, uploaded the House of the Dragon premiere to YouTube, bot C-section and all, so anyone can watch it for free.
I mean, I'd assume they've got some kind of parental warnings on there. Thinking about
You
that,
would hope.
you would hope, but I think that's cool. They're really trying to get everyone in the door because they don't need to do this. It's already got insane viewership.
Right.
But they're really trying to sell basically everyone. They want everyone in the world to watch this show.
On that bandwagon. Yeah, cool. Good for them.
All right. Yeah. Good for us for being able to watch it for free. So, Dan, Warner Brothers Discovery, which is apparently our conversation topic for the day because they're not on fire. They canceled DC Fandom, which is a big fan event for DC stuff. Not happening.
Again, like, so this was like an all digital kind of like a Star Wars Celebration-esque thing about DC. I don't know. It always seemed like it was kind of forced into being to be that. I never really particularly cared about it. I just wonder. I wonder if they'd come out leaner. I wonder. Probably not. I don't want to say it because I the narrative right now is it's all awful. But I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fair. I wonder too. We won't know for a while.
All right. Oh, and finally, here we go. No, wait. Sorry, not finally. Jamie Campbell Bower, who played the villain Vecna in Stranger Things, he auditioned once upon a time to play Harry Potter and Edward from Twilight.
Give me that evil Vecna Harry Potter. I'd watch it.
Yeah.
Nah, I can understand why he didn't get, especially that one. He catches. I feel like he'd be a better Malfoy than a Harry. But Edward
you think that now
Twilight,
because
sure, I do. Yeah, that's true. I've never seen him be, heartfelt and nice. Maybe he was in another life. Vecna was Harry Potter, the boy who lived. All right. Our final the boy who killed, final lightning round question. So Dune and The Expanse won awards at the 2022 Hugo Awards, which is a huge, basically gold standard book and film award ceremony for science fiction and fantasy. Yeah, happened at Worldcon last weekend, I think. Yeah, in Chicago. I was sad I couldn't make it. But what do you think? Happy for those that won?
Of course, yeah. Dune won Best Long Form Presentation, and I think The Expanse finale won Best Short Form. Very cool. Those things are getting recognition because they're both very strong. And like you said, the Hugos are back to the 50s, a very venerated award show. Even if they can get infiltrated by puppies. And cool to see those things getting some recognition.
Yeah, I think The Expanse, I think they're a year behind. So I'm pretty sure the one that won is from season 5. It's the season 5 finale where Naomi was floating through space.
Gotcha.
Which was a crazy episode.
All right, and that is our show. Thanks for everyone watching. And as you may or may not know, we do this every Wednesday live on the Winners Coming Facebook page and YouTube page at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're also doing, for the duration of House of the Dragon, recap and reviews directly after every episode, Sunday nights at the same place. Facebook, YouTube, come on by. We'll talk about the latest things, what's going to happen. We're going to talk all about it immediately after, right here, like you said. And that's not enough. Shouldn't be. We're also available in podcast form on iTunes, Apple Play, wherever podcasts are available. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the fruitful, productive discussions. Just thank you. Goodbye.